Good morning. Welcome back. I want to do another scripture analysis with you guys, but instead of having you read the passage first and then me just give thoughts and notes on it, this time I want to walk through verse by verse. The passage is Genesis 22, 1 through 19. It's often referred to as the binding of Isaac. After these things, God tested Abraham and said to him, "Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you." A few things should be going off in your brain right now. Number one, the passage says God tested Abraham. So even though this passage has Abraham in the position of somebody who has to sacrifice his son, it's clear from the beginning that the author did not want us to feel like God expected Abraham to actually follow through with it. He knew from the beginning he was going to stop Abraham. Another thing that should be going off is that God calls Isaac Abraham's only son, which is a little funny when you consider the fact that he had another son. The passage says that because of a few things that happen in the chapter prior. So the first thing that happens in chapter 21 is Isaac is born. God fulfills his promise to Abraham by giving him an heir through Sarah. Since the union between Hagar and Abraham hadn't been lawful, not according to the will of God, Isaac had to be Abraham's heir. The second thing that happened is Ishmael and Hagar are exiled from Abraham's family. Abraham effectively disowns Ishmael. And the third thing that happens is that Abraham settles at Beersheba. He settles down, and so he can't just go to the next town and find another concubine. Essentially, what chapter 1 establishes is that if the promise does not come through Isaac, it's not coming at all. Well, we good. Let's continue. So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering, and arose and went to the place of which God had told him. On the third day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." Hebrews explains that this is a display of faith on Abraham's part. He believes that God will somehow protect Isaac or even resurrect him. And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son, and he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, "My father." And he said, "Here I am, my son." He said, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering." So they went, both of them, together. When they came to the place of which God had told him, Abraham built the altar there and laid the wood in order and bound Isaac his son and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Later Jewish scholarship would actually point to this passage and equate Isaac carrying the wood of his own sacrifice to a man condemned carrying his own cross in the Roman culture, which is ironic since they can't see the parallels to Jesus as clearly. Another important thing to note is that the early Israelites who were reading this story initially would have resonated with Isaac in this position because their whole existence depends on his not being sacrificed on that altar. So they're getting a little sweaty at this point, like what's gonna happen? Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to slaughter his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from heaven and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him, for now I know that you fear God, seeing that you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him was a ram, caught in a thicket by his thorn. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. This is one of the earliest instances in the Bible of a substitutionary sacrifice. That is a really important aspect of Jesus' own sacrifice for us. Abraham owed his everything to God. He owed Isaac to God. So Abraham called the name of that place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." And the angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son. I will surely bless you, and I will surely multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. And your offspring shall possess the gate of his enemies." It's worth noting that this is one of the passages Paul quotes in Galatians, and he points out that offspring is singular in the Hebrew. And he's saying that this is a Christotelic prophecy. "And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice." So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived at Beersheba. So what gives? Why did God test Abraham in this way? To answer that, let's read a short passage from the beginning of Genesis 12. "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. This was a very patriarchal culture in the sense that your father's identity was your own in a lot of ways. Your inheritance and the prospect of taking over the family as the patriarch was central to their idea of how society functioned. And so for God to call Abraham out of his father's house, that was insane. Oh, I'm out of coffee. That was effectively God asking Abraham to give up his whole past, everything that had been built by his father and the generations leading up to him. Give it up and follow me. And he says, then I will give you all of these blessings. But those blessings are confirmed all the way forward in Genesis 22. We see between these two chapters, instance after instance of Abraham behaving badly. And this is one of the few Old Testament instances we get of somebody just getting it right. God said, give me all of your past in chapter 12. And then in Genesis 22, he says, give me all of your future. And this wouldn't have been unfamiliar to Abraham either. Abraham's coming from the land of Ur. That was a land in which they practiced a lot of child sacrifice. It was common for the gods of the people of Ur to ask them to sacrifice children for better crops or whatnot, and they would do it willingly. So this seemed right to Abraham. And it was a way for God to say, do you love me the way that those pagans love their gods? And Abraham answered, absolutely, unequivocally, yes. He said, Lord, I have given you my past, and if you want my future, you can have it. And God said, good. Now that I know you're serious, I'm going to establish all of these blessings through you. So it is an amazing, deeply theological passage. And that's what I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you wouldn't mind sharing this video with your friends, that helps me out a lot. Also like this video and comment any questions you have for future videos down below. Have a good rest of your week. I'll see you later.